Calling to order the special town council meeting on Monday, August 23rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. here in McKinnon Council Chambers. Agenda item number 1, roll call.
Councillor Adams?
Present.
Councillor Catrona?
Present.
Councillor Daniel?
Present.
Councillor Dow? Present. Councillor Jovan?
Present.
Councillor Lazo?
Present.
Councillor Marquetti?
Present.
Councillor Ryan?
Present.
And Councillor Steves?
Present.
We have a quorum. Item 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Item 3, consider and accept special town council meeting minutes of June 28th, 2021 as amended as requested at town council meeting of July 26th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Wait, I wasn't there, was I? That was when I was at. I wasn't at, was I?
That was the block hearing.
Yeah, I wasn't at the document. So
All right.
I have to abstain.
Okay, we have 8 affirmative and 1 abstention. Item number 4, discuss goals and objectives for the town manager fiscal year 2021, year number 2 of his contract and related matter. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to discuss the goals and objectives for the town manager. It was my hope that we would brainstorm goals and objectives in a similar fashion to council's forum, unless people have a different idea about how they'd like to see it done. Okay, then let's just start on this side. Councilor Marquetti, do you have any specific goals and objectives you'd like to have considered?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took a look at the goals and objectives that have been done in the past, and I basically thought they were pretty good. Budget and facilities, professional staff, open and transparent government, business, community, and economic development, long-term town development, education. These were all covered under previous town managers' evaluation, and I didn't think they were too bad. They're all broken down in subsections. I would say, though, that I would like to see something that this town manager would have a comprehensive capital planning plan in place. I think that should be a goal that we should expect from him, that he has a very in-depth and comprehensive capital planning, budget planning. So that would be the only thing I would add to it. Thank you.
Very good. The clerk have all that?
Yep, got it.
Very good. Moving along, Councilor Catrona.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to pass and come back to me, please?
Absolutely.
I'm looking for my notes.
Certainly, no problem.
Thank you.
Councilor Steves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of specific things. One is that I've noticed concerns about the way...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. It's very difficult to hear any of the councils up
Okay,
there.
I'll try speaking up. Is that better there, Jack? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it was difficult to also hear Councilman Marquetti, so I'm not picking on you. So
Okay.
Thank you.
I was about to say that I've noticed that we've had some concerns talking to Maureen, as you know, my partner's on conservation, and seeing some of the issues down there. I think I'd like to see one of the things I'd like to see the manager do is get a part-time conservation agent independent of Eric, because his focus is mostly, if not entirely, on planning, and he's made it clear that he doesn't want to do the conservation side of it. So I think if we could have maybe a 25 or even 30%, maybe half-time conservation agent, we could get some of the issues, like, for example, the issues that are going on up on Dresser Hill repeatedly, actually addressed with somebody who has the time and the experience to really focus on them. So that's one of them. The other thing, one of the others ties into the municipal vulnerability planning grant that we recently approved. And that is that I'd love to see once as that process goes along, I'd love to see our plans include ways to to focus on getting off fossil fuels, including our vehicle fleet, and issues related to some of the recent studies that have reconfirmed the limits to growth timelines that we're starting to see actually come up and bite us pretty much right about now. So, and I have some of that stuff I can email over.
I didn't hear what you said after getting off of fossil fuels. It just, there is a fan over here too, so
Okay.
it's hard for me to hear.
And the other thing was, it was kind of related in that I was thinking about about issues related to recent reports and studies that have confirmed the old limits to growth study from the 70s, that have looked at some of the issues that we now are seeing that are coming up, that are catching up to us, and that I think as a community we're not necessarily responsible for them per se, but the only way we're going to get through the long-term future, I think, is if we focus on dealing with some of them at the local level. I can send it to you.
That would probably be good, because I thought you said limits to growth.
I did.
Okay.
I did. And I'll send it to you. And the third one I was thinking of was something that Councilor Marchetti probably saw in previous town managers' recommendations that was never done, which was translation of town documents and the website. I think that would be really beneficial for our significant Hispanic community. We did talk about that a few years ago. Unfortunately, that kind of never went anywhere before this manager. And I think we certainly have enough people in town hall who are fluent in Spanish, who could maybe create a committee or something who could review those things and put things up there that would benefit the community. We may not necessarily have somebody who has the legal background to make a legal translation of something, but we could at least put things up there that the average educated Latino in our community would be able to read and understand it in Spanish, even if they need formal, some sort of a formal legal background to, like for example the charter and stuff like that. And that's what I had.
Great, thank you. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I just want to echo, I think all the things listed previously under town manager goals and objectives in previous evaluations is a good starting point, and I would like to see those as we start to develop these included in that, as well as I would like a long-term plan around recreational opportunities and entertainment. I'm going to be quite frank, as a young person, there's not much to do in town. And I would really like to see something done around creating more recreational and entertainment opportunities for younger people and for families. I think one of the ways you're going to attract families into Southbridge is by providing more recreational opportunities. I know one of the reasons a lot of families do move in when I was living next door in Southbridge was because of recreational opportunities and educational opportunities. So while we're working on the school system as an educational opportunity, I think one of the things we should be starting to develop is a long-term plan for recreational and entertainment goals. And as I would also like to second Councilor Steves' suggestion on translation. That's a really big barrier sometimes to access to transparency in government, is not having everything translated. And those were my suggestions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ryan. Councilor Lazo.
You talk about goals and objectives, where we are, where we were, and where we want to be. I guess that plugs into some of the things you want to bring forward. I've done this so many times that it seems like it's boilerplate, where you turn around and say, okay, we got some goals. We want to get rid of blight. These are boilerplate issues. Budget, control taxes, water rates and cable rates, recreation, roads, sidewalks, schools. These are all important goals to better all these things. The thing that's impressive so far with this manager, and he kind of came in midstream, and I didn't think we should have jumped on an evaluation until he got his 2 feet planted and had some time in. But in the short time that he's been here, he's been the taskmaster and basically carrying out the will of the council on many issues. When the Wells project came up, he took it on. When the registry came up, he had an HVAC problem, he took it on. He ended up politically and as a manager, managing his way into opening the registry of motor vehicles. As we look around and we have other projects, I know that the Veterans Park and various recreation parks there's a lot of things that are in there, like people want to talk about the rail trail, and they want to talk about this, we need something to do in the town of Southbridge. I think, you know, bringing more business, and I'm going to go with one of the other councils I talked to, economic development's got to be the biggest. You take a mill, a blighted area, and turn it into an economic juggernaut. I think this town manager possesses the ability, needs the support and direction of a council. So I'm on board with pretty much, Mr. Chairman, all of the goals and objectives that everybody talks about. But this has been a council of get it done, less ballyhoo and BS, and not a lot of 100 meetings to fix a sidewalk or a front step on a town hall. I think this is the mentality that's been instilled over the last 3 years. I like it. I think we should build on it. I know you asked me what I think is important. I think we're on the right track with all the projects in our economic development group and its office moving in the right direction. What we need to do is basically pinpoint 3 issues that we think are a priority as a council. And because in a year, this town manager is going to take on everything at different intervals, and you're going to have things come up like COVID. Boom, here it is. What are you going to do about it? The American Optical, something happened down there. What are you going to do about it? So the day-to-day operations for the town manager in Southbridge, I think are overwhelming, and I think he does a good job handling them. I think the council should poll us and find out 3 of the top issues that you would want to call goals. And if we can accomplish 3 of them, because they're all big, I think we'll be way ahead of the game starting next year. And evaluating him is going to be probably one of the easiest town managers or superintendents that I'll probably ever evaluate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. First time I've been here, the town manager. 23 years in town. What I see was done in the past, nothing. The time he's been here, I think he did super great job. I know the town need a lot of improvement, but he have so much. The time we're giving him so far is he can move so much. So I'm sure in the future he will do better than now. And I just want to congratulate him. Good job, Mr. Council. That's it. That's my opinion.
All set. Thank you very much. Councilor Catrona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, and I'll probably come back later.
Sure.
It's been just my opinion. I have several goals and objectives for this town manager. I think we should take a look at, possibly look at a goal and then look at the objective. How are we going to attain the goal? Possibly have as many as 14 specific goals that this council picks for the town manager. From there, we set a goal, and then we set an objective with a date to that, so that we know, for example, the schools, we know we have issues. We know we have, we want to try and come out of receivership. So we set that as a goal, and then we have an objective for that goal. Some of the things that I have are taxes, budget, the education, land use, economic structure. I apologize, I'm trying to get my notes in order. I dropped my briefcase outside in the rain. I think to have our town manager look at working with all the town businesses to improve the opportunity for successful operations, encourage retail business, which goes under economic development, and how we can better the town. I did hear earlier, for example, Councilor brought up the rail trail, which has been a pet peeve of mine. Let's set a specific goal with a date in mind, for example, just like we do the schools. I think within town hall, become a motivator, and set that as a goal, and to increase productivity. And how do we monitor these goals afterwards, I think is going to be another objective of the town manager, to report back to council. But I think if we have specific dates and times, for example, as I read through his contract, it goes budget to budget. We come back to this next year and we say, okay, how did the town manager do? Let's evaluate them in both goals and objectives. Right now we're working on goals. I think also supporting change. Bring his managers on board and other department heads to support change within town hall possibly. As things develop and we make their staffing changes that are happening and that are going to be happening, and come back to council and let us know how those changes went. And that should, I think, be a big goal for the upcoming year. Working with Munis and all the financial officers to ensure that the systems are running efficiently and that all the staff is trained and all the networks are running properly. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, as soon as I find all my paperwork, I'd like to come back.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of great topics that were brought up. I would disagree with the previous speaker that 14 goals is an awful lot of goals. A lot of those things can be talked into what a day-to-day management of the town is. Fiscal responsibility is the town manager's job, and how do we get there? Capital plan, to a previous town council, is part of the budget cycle that is a requirement of the town manager to present a capital plan to the town council. That's already part of the job description. So as a council, I know through your leadership here, have put together a group to how do we get that best product so the town manager can present that detail. So that, to me, that is not the goal. That's not a goal of the town manager. The council has taken that upon themselves to be able to say, we know there's an issue with the capital plan presentation of however it was laid out. The council is working on what do we expect to see in that capital plan, and then giving direction to the town manager to say, now this is how that's going to be presented to the council through the budget. So you're identifying that not necessarily as a goal, because the council's trying to give tools to the town manager to present it in a fashion that we want to see it go. To Councilor Lauzzo's point, he's absolutely right. Really, three key objective areas of what we want to accomplish. There's no doubt that we talk about taxes, but that's a direction that we as a council should say, what is our fiscal policy going to be as a council to say, if it is that our taxes are too high and we want to see a decrease or whatever, or better fiscal management, then what is the direction as a council that we give so that it's filtered down from the top down? That's not a goal. It's the town council says, look, our fiscal responsibility, or what we want for taxes next year, is 1%, a 1% increase or a 1% decrease. We want you to present a budget to the town council that accomplishes that mission. Now that could be a goal of fiscal responsibility, so it's, hey, this is what, but we have to make that decision. We can't wait till the budget's formulated by the town departments and then say, last minute, hey, what is a 2% cut? What's a 3% cut? If we didn't give any direction as a council, that's our responsibility to the town manager. So you look at the different buckets, and I've gone out on different, I did some research to look at what other towns put together as goals and objectives, as well as our goals and objectives that we set forth for the previous town manager. Now, the previous town manager, we had to set specific dates when we did our last goals and objectives because of previous issues with the goals that we had set. I don't see that in this town manager. This town manager, if we give him a direction and say, this is what we would like to see, we know we're getting a product out of it. So at the end of the year, if the goal is, whatever it is, a 1% budget presentation, we can either accept it or not. If he did that, that's you evaluate the town manager on that. I don't need a date specific for that because it's part of the budget process. So what are the things that we want to look at as a town to put into a goal? And what are the ongoing projects that need to be accomplished? So is that a goal, to take a look at the ongoing projects that we have now and make a presentation on what the realistic timelines will be to accomplish this? We have a fire station project. We have an animal shelter that we continue to bump up against. So I looked at one of the towns was, one of the goals was to, actually I looked at the previous community that the town manager came from, Chelmsford, which had quite a few goals. They actually had 12, so they did have quite a bit, to the Council Catrona's point, but there was no dates on it. So some of the things were, so we talked about budgets, we talked about taxes. One of the goals from the previous town that he worked from was establish a FY22 budget recommendation that raises the tax levy below the 2.5 limit while slowing the rate of increase on resident and local business property taxes, and work with those boards, right? The expectation was the FY22 budget recommendation in accordance with the goal. That's what you want to see. That's the expectation. And the result is the recommendation comes to us as a result of the goal. So what are the other things that we look at? We talk about communication with residents. We do know that the town manager put together a proposal to update the town website. So if a goal is that we want to improve the communication to our residents and get more input into the board, how can the town manager develop a plan for that, i.e. The implementation of the website. If we want additional recreational opportunities, that is part of the budget process that we're going to ask the town manager to put. So when we lay out our fiscal responsibility, we want additional recreation. How do we fit that in? So there's all great points. So again, and the schools are a big thing, but how do you articulate that goal between a town and a school department? That's a difficult thing. It's really, for us to come out of receivership, it's my belief that we, as the elected body, have to petition to the state. The town manager handles the finances, but what is his role in this? So those are some of my thoughts, and I welcome some of the other input, but it really should be concise goals and the continuation of cleaning up the things that have not been completed, because we still have a lot of projects on the books that have not been completed, i.e. the DPW school facilities study, the school buildings assessments about how we do it with town buildings, the own assessment of, so we had the assessment on the school buildings, we had the assessment on the town buildings. How are we going to develop a plan to be able to address those high dollar items and fit that into the fiscal policy? So these are the big things, the big vision pictures that I want the town manager, that I would like to see the town manager work on. And those are going to be long-term. So we're going to have a long-term goals and short-term goals. So those are some of my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I wrote down 4 items that I thought were the most important items that we should continue to look at, but I believe there's multiple important things from schools and infrastructure. But out of the 4, 2 of them are ongoing, from infrastructure projects to fire station and all that kind of stuff that continue to be watched over. And so I know the town manager's been doing that quite often, along with the boards that they belong to. So out of the 4, 2 are pretty much ongoing already, but the number one thing I do have is curbside collection, to address that, to come up with the plan. We already have we have multiple plans, but come up and shrink those down to 1 or 2 areas. I think I will give kudos to the board that was there, that did a lot of the legwork to make sure it was good, but it's up to the town council to ultimately make that decision. But it is also up to the town staff and town manager to come up with the specifics of costs here and there. So I do think my number one thing is curbside collection. I did receive an email this evening about it, but that's one of those things that the chair and I have been talking about since first week of July after the vote for chair and vice chair. And it's something that Councilor Marquetti has brought up multiple times, and I think we've had multiple conversations. So I think it's something that, and I agree with a lot of what the previous speaker did say, but I would recommend, we are on a timeline for this. There's an end date. So there has to be, maybe not a specific date maybe for this, but maybe a general area where we know the town manager, without having to bother him every single day or every week, say, you know, where's this at, where are we at? We know in the month of October, November, he's going to come and give us a brief with his staff. So it's one of those things where common sense has to prevail, and it doesn't have to bother, we don't have to bother him, all 9 of us, every single day about curbside collection. The second one is what the previous speaker had brought up. I put down review and give recommendations / plan, the municipality's evaluation management plan dated June 6, 2016. Schools facility evaluation management plan dated May 1st, 2019. And facilities grounds management study, town and school department dated January 28, 2018. Councilor Lazo brings up quite often about studies that we do in this town, and we never follow through with them. Here's 3 of them that we're actually right now running into issues with, from DPW staffing to a few other things that can help bring this along. But on this specific item, I don't recommend that it has to be completed by the end of the year, because this is a long-term, it has to be well thought out. It's going to cost money. We got to figure those, and that's one of those 2 goals I believe are the most important, at least to myself at this point in time, for the town of Southbridge. But that's all I've got. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Councilor Catrona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick notes. Again, going back to what I stated earlier with the goals and objectives, I also, too, looked at 2 communities, the town of Chelmsford and the town of Kingston. One has, Chelmsford there were 12 goals, and Kingston had 14. I think if we make the goals attainable, and such as one of the communities here, they did put on the objectives, there's specific dates to at least give their community and the council's updates. You know, for example, give a specific date of completion so that there's a goal. And what's the objective of that goal is to have a date of completion or a date to report back to council to say, here's an update, and I want everyone to understand. I think we are on a specific timeline to get these goals, objectives done, to have them completed as quickly as possible. I know that the contractually, we're coming up on a year, but we've already been through the budget, and we don't have specific goals and objectives yet, and we should have. So to that, I like all the ideas that I heard this evening, and certainly I'd like to see a timeline placed on this for completion of specific goals with objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything they wish to add before I speak? Councilor Lazo.
There were a lot of good ideas put on the floor. I think our intentions are all good. But in past experiences in school districts and in the townside government, we have lived as a council, some of us 2 or 3 years, and we've been re-elected to come back. And during those years, you learn about what the problems are. and what the successes are. I think if you want to do it, we can give this town manager 50 goals and objectives, and we'll get nothing done. I personally think that when you go into 1 year, you'll blink your eyes and you're ready for the next year. So when you turn around and say, look, Mr. Town Manager, I'm going to give you an example. I want a school dismount design presented to the Commissioners of Education and Human Services. We want our schools back, top priority. Number 2, curbside pickup. The landfill is closed, the bus is coming, time to prioritize. And the third one, I would, you could pick one out of, those two come out immediately. But I think some of the communication to council, I personally think, has been good. So I'm not going to pick on the communication part. The transparency, come on. The word transparency is used more than the word the up here. I just think that what we have to do is follow through with a plan. Whatever you decide, we have the plan. Whether it came off a shelf or we created it, it's a plan. Where the frustration comes in is implementation of the plan. Because I think the manager comes out of the gate with the plan. And we have some department heads that for some reason can't get off a center line with some of the projects, with some of the things. When a finance director comes to you and says, don't put any more money in accounts because the projects are not getting done and you guys are funding them, that's a management problem. That's not our problem, that's his problem. He needs to get the department heads all on board in a timely fashion. One of the things we're going to be talking about, a reorganization of the manager's office and HR. This would have been a goal, the HR department, because I think the HR department, when they first did it, was done hastily, and we're learning about it, and we'll try and make it better. But again, gang, don't pile 15 goals on them. It'll never work, and you'll never get them done.
Very good. I'm quite pleased because it seems very apparent to me that the council has once again given a lot of good thought and pre-thought to a very important aspect of town government in our relationship, the town council's relationship with the town manager. It seems apparent to me that we're talking both goals and objectives. There might be a little bit of semantic play in there possibly in terms of exactly what an objective is, but I think that's something that we can work out. I don't think that's an issue. I think it's very obvious though that there are some major overarching goals that have come out. For instance, communication, which includes the topics of translation, maintaining the website, positive communication with the town council and with the community at large. So there's an overarching goal right there, just maintaining good positive communication. Infrastructure needs include things like recreation, building, roads, trash. So it's come out with your due diligence, fellow council members, that you've come up with a good list of what goals potentially can be. At this point, I'd like to ask Councilors Jovan, Ryan, and Steves to form a small subcommittee to whittle down this information into a practical document that we can have presented back to the council to be accepted by the council. I'll leave it up to the committee to set their meetings, to meet with the town manager as well, who should have input into this as well. I think that it's important that the town manager have a say as well. Councilor Jovan.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I just want to be recognized when you're done, that's all.
All right. I think that that looking at goals is important. I think that it's valuable. Some people in the community may think that the town manager should basically have an idea about what he's doing, being a professional. But I think that we as the council do need to give direction to the town manager in terms of what we feel are the best interests of the town. We have a responsibility to the taxpayer. We have a responsibility to the citizens in town. And I think that this is an important function that the council has. Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the town manager, I'd like to hear his thoughts on, this is a joint venture. It's not just us forming goals for the town manager. It really should be a jointly. So I'd like to hear the town manager and his thoughts on what he thinks or like to accomplish as well, so that when we develop it, we're all on the same page. And that's the important thing, is that we're all on the same page going forward. I've heard some things about the fact that fiscal year, yes, we missed the evaluation at the fiscal year. Councilor Catrona keeps bringing it up. However, earlier in this fiscal year, we had a meeting, council meeting of the whole, where we discussed this. So let's, moving forward, make sure that we're all on the same page. Thought we were all on the same page, but we're not. So let's get it accomplished. Let's make sure that we do the timely goals and objectives, that we do the evaluation per the contract. That's the important thing. So with that, I'd like to ask the town manager, what's his thoughts about these goals?
I brought it up once, Councilor.
Please, this is not a time for this type of discussion. We're here for the goals and objectives.
Just make up stories.
Your objection is noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to debate the previous speaker. I'm not talking just this meeting. It's been brought up at numerous meetings where comments have been made. So, and I don't want to debate it with him.
Thank you.
And I'm just saying that when we know that things are issues, we fix them. I just want to, as the record, we have discussed this throughout the council year. And now's the time to start the page. You have an evaluation committee all set to continue the evaluation as a council. And we were all on the same page that the previous goals and objectives, that we had a lot of things that the town manager was trying to clean up. Hence why we didn't set goals and objectives last year. And that was a discussion that we had as a full council. That was my point. Time is to turn the page for for this fiscal year. And Councilor Catrona is correct. They should be measurable goals. And our mission should be to make sure that we have that it's not so overwhelming that the individual in the position, no matter who the town manager is, can't accomplish those goals while trying to run the day-to-day operations of the town of Southbridge. A $63 million business.
It is.
Okay, with a lot of issues in town. Fiscal issues, personnel issues, and we are not the only community that is having trouble with staffing. Go to the Mass Municipal website and you will see numerous numbers of towns that now people are just getting out of municipal government or doing something different. So how do we work with the town manager to make sure that we adequately staff the positions that would affect morale? So I would like to hear from the town manager his thoughts, how he would like to work with this council to develop those goals jointly so that we can have a productive year, that next year when we do the evaluation, we can look back in time and say, did we accomplish a lot of what we did? If we were to look back as a council right now, without any goals and objectives being set by this council, if you were to look back a year ago when this town manager took office, now almost a year to the day, to see how much was actually accomplished without having goals and objectives, it's a much different town and town hall and community than it was a year ago. And that's kudos to the council working with the town manager. And how do we now foster that relationship with the town manager to make sure that we get the best goals in place that we can accomplish to continue to improve the community. So I'd like to hear from the town manager. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I apologize to the council if I gave the impression that I was going to skip over the town manager. That was not my intent, not at all. So I apologize if I gave that impression, and I apologize to the town manager as well. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Just to echo a little bit of what Councilor Jovan had mentioned, when I interviewed and when I came here, I understood that we were going to have a lot of challenges and that we would be working together. and you entrusted me with an awful lot of responsibilities, not a lot of goals and objectives at the time. But I like to think, based on my past performance as a manager and a facilitator, that I was able to pick up on the priorities here in the community and work with those. I mean, there was some laid out. There was various contracts, the RMV, some of our water operations. We're still working on the cable contract, but there's a lot of things that were clearly identifiable as things that need to be addressed. I will say that you did add a couple of goals and objectives along the way. Councilor Marchetti brought up the paving issue. So we implemented a paving management plan, and that was based on an older study. So I agree there are older studies on the shelf that we can look at. I like to think that I've touched on many of the areas that the council has mentioned this evening, working in your infrastructure, communication, getting out, working with the community, trying to meet the businesses. I like to think that I can accomplish a lot once I'm given the direction. I guess what I would respectfully request is that, you know, we ensure that we are working to succeed and for the betterment of Southbridge, and not just pile on too many objectives for the sake of it, because it has to be obtainable goals so that we can continue to make progress on the day-to-day operations. I do think I've worked well with the department heads and trying to motivate some of the staff. I think that's evident in some of the progress that we made. Also looking at the things like the reorg that we're presenting this evening. There are still day-to-day management responsibilities. There have been a lot of issues and hiccups along the way. We've had COVID. You know, it hasn't gone unnoticed that we have facilities issues, because over the course of the year we've had roof leaks, we've had roofs blow off, we've had mechanical failures, but we've managed to make it through and continue to work on those larger goals of getting these contracts and other things done. So I think I've demonstrated that I can handle the day-to-day operations as well as get your high-level goals accomplished, or at least make progress on them. I recognize there's a few here that, you know, we talked about a meeting or two ago, Councilor Marchetti brought it up. I said, I do worry about making sure we start the curbside collection, because that's one goal that's going to have a hard and fast deadline. Some of the others, the goal line moves from time to time, and that's because there's a lot of variables involved. Very simply, we started out probably 6 months or more ago trying to get additional liquor licenses from the town. And every time we think we have a working draft, the state senate subcommittees come back and ask us to revisit things, and it keeps getting pushed off a little bit further. Maybe they don't get to vote on a particular day, things like that. We can't control some of that, but other things we can. I think some of these goals and objectives will require me, as was pointed out by several council members, to come back and give updates. Some we can have timelines, some it's going to have to be open-ended. But again, I'm looking forward to working with you in the next fiscal year and through the next year of my contract. What I just want to make sure is we all have goals and objectives that we all realize that are obtainable and that they're all in the best interest of the community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Is there any further discussion? Very good. Let's move on, please.
Excuse me, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
sorry. Counselor?
Just want to make sure that, again, so that we're all on the same page, the date you would like to have this for what was the date that would you like to have this presented to council for formal vote of the things that are reduced to writing by the individuals that you asked for?
Well, let me look at my calendar. And let's see, we're going into September.
Are you looking for the second meeting in September? Is that what you're looking for?
I'm looking for the second meeting in
Whatever date that
September.
is, the second
I believe
meeting.
that's the 27th.
So we'll have it prepared for the second meeting in September?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay. Agenda item 5, discuss the town manager's proposal for the Human Resources Reorganization along with Schedule 1, and vote to accept the proposal and Schedule 1 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Manager.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I will move over to the podium very briefly just to go over a couple of quick slides.
Mr. Chairman, while he's getting ready, if you may, if fellow councils would like to email me something in writing on some of the topics that they brought up this evening so that we could have it in written form. I'll also have the minutes for this meeting, or the draft minutes at least before it. But if individual councils want to either speak to my colleagues, Councilor Steves and Councilor Ryan, but if you put something reduced to writing so that we have some format of what exactly councils were looking for, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the council, I do not have an elaborate presentation here this evening. I just have a couple slides.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone? Thank you.
I don't have an elaborate presentation this evening. It's really, I've reduced it to a couple of slides that I want to show you, as well as the organizational charts, but also address any questions that the council members may have. As you know, this was brought up at subcommittee. I was not in town that evening and I wasn't able to participate, but I just wanted to give a little background. And the reason that that came to subcommittee without me being there was we received this final report from the Collins Center from UMass Boston the Thursday before that Monday meeting. And given the timeline and the departure of our treasurer, as well as the fact that we have several open positions here at Town Hall, and we internally, the financial team here, had been talking about this, the timing was of the essence to try and get it through, because Ms. Zawadzki, our treasurer, had been working on this for some time. As we talked about during the goals and objectives session here, one of the things I do is work on the day-to-day operations. When I first got here, there was a lot of things that needed attention, but as I got settled in, we were able to start looking at various functions, and as I built better relationship with my department heads, we could have more candid conversations about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the various departments. And Ms. Zawadzki, to her credit, had come to see me early on about a couple of issues. I think one of them surfaced in the first month that I was here. And it was nothing on her, but it was a legacy issue that came from a prior administration where we received a notice of a civil penalty from the IRS. And in her time here, she's indicated to me she's received 3 such notices, I believe 2 in the last year. And they have to do with compliance issues which are related to the Affordable Care Act and the insurance offerings, as well as certain filings. And how that ties into HR is that we have, instead of a centralized HR organization here, we have a fragmented organization. In my last community, we had an HR director, and I worked with the HR director. I was essentially the backup. And that person handled the centralized evaluations, benefits administration, onboarding, most of the traditional tasks that you would expect. When I came here, I realized that in my office I have an HR specialist whose time is split as part of a confidential clerk from my office answering phones, handling duties in my office, as well as working with the liquor board, handling licensing, and then devotes a portion of their time to HR functions, primarily working on some of the paperwork, but recruitment efforts, various things with our insurance. And then in Ms. Zawadzki's office, we had a benefits administrator, if you will. One of the clerks there worked on some of the paperwork that came in through the schools. And then Ms. Zawadzki also worked on helping coordinate the benefits with the insurance. There's another component that happens on the other side of the school where they do their own internal HR. And there seemed sometimes to be disconnects when people were sent to bring paperwork between the 2 entities, the school side and the town side. So we had some meetings early on I talked to Dr. Villar about that. We tried to work through that. But a couple of things came to my attention. This next thing is from our town accountant that does our annual audit. And this is out of the draft FY 2020 management letter, that they had a paragraph at the end. It's still in draft form, But it did say the town has grown rapidly over the last decade and in numerous ways has many of the same issues of a small city. The human resource function is currently being administered through the treasurer's office and at times has either hamstrung the office or caused inefficiencies in the human resource function. The town should evaluate creating a dedicated human resource office to administer this process. And along the way, because of the information that had been exchanged with Ms. Zawadzki, and we've had these similar conversations with Ms. Harnois, we talked about how best to try and resolve this issue, to move personnel. We had applied for a grant to go through the Collins Center to have some type of study done. We didn't get the grant, but we had some money internally to do at least some evaluation of what was going on here in Town Hall. So we pursued this third party, the Collins Center for Public Management. It's well known and well respected for the work that they do. They do a lot of executive searches and this type of work for other communities. And they came in and interviewed the people in the various departments. They looked at what was going on through my office, Ms. Zawadzki's office, as well as what was going on between the schools. And they came back with a report that was presented. It was part of the packet, I believe, for the General Government Subcommittee meeting. But they came back with a list of recommendations, but I just synthesized it down to these two quotes, very similar to what was in the audit letter. It says, as communities and personnel issues have grown more complex, the responsibilities of town administration have also changed, expanded, and placed more federal and state compliance demands on municipalities. As such, many municipalities have encountered difficulties in keeping up with legal requirements of employment benefit and labor laws, which can be difficult, particularly in the fast-changing human resources landscape. And the high-level recommendation was that the town restructure the positions that focus on human resources work under the Department of the Town Manager to include a town manager, an assistant manager, HR director, a human resources specialist, and benefits coordinator. Doing so would centralize human resources and create an opportunity to clarify workflow for all employees. So, keeping all that in mind, this was the existing, or is the current existing, Human Resources Treasurer Collector and Economic Development Organization as it appears underneath me. And you can see under the Town Manager's office, there is an executive assistant, which would be Yvonne Tortis. There's a half-time administrative assistant that is currently Gail Raduca, who was formerly Cheryl Ryan's position, and then our HR specialist, who is part-time town manager clerk, that is Ms. Ferrin. In the economic development directors, in economic development in our planning area, we had the position that was formerly held by Ms. Scrivens. Below that, we have the CDBG coordinator, Ms. Dean, the planner, Eric Rumsey. We have a new assistant, and then we have a conservation clerk. Under the treasurer collectors, she essentially has two functions. She has the collector side, where we have an assistant collector and two clerks, and then she has two people in her office that perform the treasurer's function, a revenue and insurance specialist and the payroll and benefits specialist. What the recommendations came back from the Collins Center and what we've incorporated in the next slide is how to achieve the recommendations that they came back with and do it in such a way that it would increase efficiencies and effectiveness as well as remain within our current budgets and minimize any impact on the full-time equivalency. So it's outlined in the memo that was provided to you that was worked on by primarily Ms. Zawadzki and Ms. Harnois, and I did assist, and we've met several times. So what we would be looking to do is essentially combine the functions of our current HR specialist, separating the town manager assistant duties from the HR duties, and similarly utilize the vacant position in the treasurer collector's office, separate the duties out so that the HR portion from that matches up with the HR portion of our specialist, and that would become the new HR specialist slash benefits coordinator under an HR director slash assistant town manager. We would wind up having one full-time and one part-time administrative assistant along with the executive assistant in the manager's office. Those duties would be continue to handle the licensing, a lot of the other responsibilities, liquor. We also handle records requests and other things in that office. Under the treasurer collector, essentially the treasurer collector's office would lose one full-time equivalent, and some of those duties would fall on the existing clerk that is in there, and we would make that person an assistant treasurer. And one of the things that gets touched upon in these reports and some other documents that are looked at is that we need to start focusing on succession planning. We're experiencing an unprecedented time here with regard to turnover. And I think if you were to speak to most of these people, it's not anything that can really be placed upon Southbridge, but we have people that, for lack of better terms, there's a term called silver tsunami. It's the tail end of the baby boomers that are reaching the point where they're considering retiring. There's also challenges I could direct to the council that the state recognizes that there's fewer and fewer young people that want to come into municipal finance and government and management. COVID has played a significant part in this because a lot of people have begun to rethink their quality of life and what things mean to them. And there have been several people here that have recently decided to explore working in different fields or working with family members. So my HR specialist said that about a week ago, we had at Town Hall 10 open recs, which they hadn't seen in the last 10 years. And as was pointed out, in the last couple of months, there's been almost 250 job opportunities on the Massachusetts municipal website each month, which is unheard of. And that just goes to show that we're not alone. A lot of communities are facing difficult times trying to lure people in. So when you start looking at that, you have to start thinking about succession planning. So we have to start thinking about the people that we're bringing in so that they have shared responsibilities, so that in the event somebody leaves, we have somebody that could either temporarily help out or maybe move into that position. And we don't always have that in every particular department, and that's something that we need to look at. It appears that we've leveraged, in many instances, a lot of part-time personnel, and that may have been done at one particular time to save some money on benefits. I don't know the history of every position here, but what I think as we go through, just like we're looking at this, we may need to look at other departments, how to increase efficiencies and effectiveness going down the road. So the treasurer's office, as I indicated, would lose one person, and we would take the remaining person. There would be some increase in responsibilities, and they would become the assistant treasurer. In the economic and planning development, what we would be proposing is not to have the dedicated economic development director that we did before. As you may recall, I did come and mention to the council that we were experimenting with having Ms. Dean and Ms. Rumsey handle some of our economic development in the interim, and this did a couple of things. It allowed us to determine and evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, and they both have done a fine job. And also to recognize some savings by not filling that position immediately, because I think we have enough talent that we could work with that. In order to effectuate the change that we want on the HR side, we realized that we would have to propose a permanent change to what's going on in economic development. And so what we are proposing is that we create a position which our CDBG Economic Development Coordinator position. And that essentially combines a portion of the former economic director's duties and responsibilities with that of our current CDBG coordinator. And that person would essentially become the supervisor down there. We have a great new employee that is working as our CDBG clerk, who at the time was hired. We had a discussion that the position, if they so were interested, we would be evaluating whether or not that would be full-time at some point. I have seen documents in the past that it indicated that at one time there was 4 full-time equivalents in that particular department, and that CDBG admin was a full-time position. It was reduced to part-time. But looking at what we can utilize some of our grant monies, we should be able to increase that position from part-time to full-time using the grant funds without touching any of our adding anything, I should say, to our budget line items. The town planner would go unchanged, as well as the conservation clerk. Now, by taking some of the savings that we would realize, because some of these positions wouldn't be at the same salary grade level as they previously were. We're not proposing an A9 for the Economic Development Coordinator / CDBG Coordinator. The previous director was an A9. We're looking at an MS-19. And similarly, Ms. Zawadzki is at a different level of experience than somebody we're looking to bring in. So we're going to realize savings due to the changes in the turnover in these positions, as well as some of the unutilized portion of Ms. Scriven's position. That would allow us to create the full-time position of an HR director / assistant town manager. Now, I had discussed this particular position when I was interviewed. There are a fair amount of communities. I can point to Wilmington, Holliston. There's a bunch, I don't have them all committed to memory, that utilize this type of position. It's primarily an HR function, but they also, when they have capacity, they serve as a staff resource to the manager and other senior members of our team, department heads. There are, as was alluded to before, we have a lot going on in the community. Many of these are intensive in terms of documentation, timelines, and for the RFQs. We're going to be looking at the work for Curbside, the fire station. Many of these communities that go through the similar process do have another person on staff that is able to chip in and fill in on those types of projects. I'm anticipating that there are ebbs and flows in HR. Having worked alongside the HR director, you have certain times a year, you have open enrollment with the schools, you have a lot of new hires in the fall, you have people leave in the spring. So it can be cyclical, and during those cycles, that would, in my mind, free up that individual to provide assistance to either me or some of the other senior staff. And during my conversations with the Collins Center, I think they picked up upon that, and based on the recommendations, that's why they went along with that. So, working with the staff, the rationale behind the human resources reorganization that we presented to you and we have presented again this evening is to establish and maintain a legally compliant centralized human resources function that would allow for centralized file administration system that maintains personnel files for all town employees. This was highlighted in the report from the Collins Center. Because we have a fragmented system now, some files are kept with the various entities that are working on it. We should have them stored all in one locale. That goes to the confidentiality of the information that's in there. Additionally, the Collins Center identified a lot of policies and other improvements that we could be making. I underscore that first one, as I indicated, that we've received some civil penalties, which we were able to, as a team on the staff, Ms. Zawadzki, Ms. Harnois, and I, we crafted letters that we sent back to these entities explaining the situation, that it was, we're in transition and we're assessing how we're performing these functions, and we were able to stay those fines. But some of these fines are in the high 5 figures. So, if we were to get handed down one of these and we weren't able to get them to take, hold it in abeyance, it could be the equivalent of a part-time employee. So we want to avoid that. We want to make sure that we centralize and do what is required of us. And the last 3 bullet items is to have a minimal impact on the number of full-time equivalents. If we go back to those 2 charts, this first one has 13.1 full-time equivalents if you add it up. If you add the full-time equivalents on this chart, it's 13.6. We add a half-time full-time equivalent, the equivalent of about 1/2 full-time employee. But again, we're looking to get those funds primarily out of CDBG, because that would be for that CDGB administrative assistant, which ties into that second to last bullet, to work within the budgets, because I know finances have been a big issue and a big concern for this council, that we're not looking to increase our bottom line. As I indicated, the savings from not filling the Economic Development Director's position, as well as advertising these new positions at different salary and grade levels, allows us to pull together the money as well as the money from CDBG to make this particular reorg work. And the last thing, and I think is the most important for me, is to make effective and efficient use of our staff resources, because I believe that's what you brought me here for, is in addition to all the other things, day-to-day operations, we need to utilize our staff as efficiently and effectively as possible, because that ties into all those other goals of being fiscally responsible and doing more with less. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. And we're trying to recognize those deficiencies that were pointed out by our auditor, as well as that outside agency, and what we've seen on our own to try and present a plan that we think is doable and will work for the best interests of our staff, our residents, and for this council. And that ends my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have Councilor Ryan first, then Councilor Steves, then Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the town manager. First of all, thank you for this presentation. This was quite thoughtful and deliberate, and I appreciate it. We had a long discussion at General Government about this. As I indicated there, I was supportive of the idea, and I'm still continuing to support the idea. I mean, the reality of the world, the private sector started this 20 years ago, of expanding human resources and compliance as roles, because they realized that regulatorily wise, this was a need. And it's now we're starting to see it happen in the public sector as well. Things get tried out in the private sector, and if they work, they get pulled into the public sector, and that's what we're seeing here. There's a lot of technicalities that we need to be keeping track of. I work in compliance. I understand how important it is that you, especially as a community, that you guys are on top of everything regulatorily. So this is common sense. We need a dedicated department, and I intend to fully support the reorganization presented from the manager tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Steves.
Thank you. Mr. McCall, I had a couple of quick questions based on your presentation. Unfortunately, obviously I wasn't at Gen Gov, and I wish I had been, but one of those days, wasn't feeling that well that day. Anyway, I was curious if, when you think about making the treasurer's clerk and assistant treasurer, what degree of training and certification does that require? How does that change their skill level and the responsibilities that they would have in the town?
Ms. Gawodzki's in the back, and she's raised her hand. I think she would like to comment.
Thank you. So there's a couple of things in this reorganization. We are looking to leave payroll in the treasurer's office, and the clerk that's in the office now would be responsible for handling that. So, you know, it does add additional responsibilities. I think I brought up my first budget here that I felt there was a need for an assistant treasurer, and that was not supported by that council at this time, but I said then, and I'll repeat now, that in the absence of a treasurer, which is coming quickly, there are things that cannot be done here if you don't appoint someone as an assistant or an acting treasurer. Someone has to hold the seat. So Nancy has already stepped up to the plate. She works really hard for me. I have added her as a signer to accounts, and she has agreed to do that, so she's taken on that additional responsibility without any reward. However, in order to officially execute a document for the town as the treasurer or assistant treasurer, she must hold that title. So I think it's important. Nancy has in the past attended the treasurer collector schools. She did not attend this year. We were very short-staffed, so she stayed to do payroll and make sure that we all got paid here. I would assume that if she was given the opportunity to be the assistant, that she could go back and continue her her classes to become certified as an assistant treasurer. It does take a couple of years, but her experience on the job and what she has been doing for me in the 2 years that I've been here absolutely supports that reclassification. She's taken on the responsibility.
Okay, I'm not saying that she hasn't. I was curious about what going forward that would mean in terms of salaries, in terms of the level of training and certification that she would have to maintain, she or whoever is holding the job, not necessarily her.
Like I said, it's a matter of experience. So she would probably go to the treasurer collector school,
Yeah.
similar to NE. NE has a certification for as an assistant collector. There is a certification for an assistant treasurer. We would likely ask her to pursue that. Secondly, it's a matter of responsibility. There is a level of responsibility that comes with that title that is outlined in the statute under Mass General Law that all towns must have a sitting treasurer and or collector.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Did I answer your question? I feel like I'm...
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if we have do you have a financial impact on what that would
Yeah,
require?
so the assistant collector is an MS 12.
Now or?
Now,
she's
well, the
current?
assistant collector, so NE, the assistant
Oh,
collector is
okay. Oh, okay.
MS 12. I assume that the assistant treasurer would be akin, which would also be an MS 12. And the difference, I think, between what Nancy makes at the top of her range as the administrative assistant 3 and the bottom of the MS 12 is less than $1,500 a year.
Okay.
It would allow her to get steps, which she hasn't had in a long time, though, going forward. So
Okay.
there is that.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had was, let me find the note here. Oh yeah, through you to the manager. Do you see any potential issues with having the HR director be an assistant town manager? One of the things that jumped out at me that I could possibly see is having some staff be concerned about their HR, but their HR role being confidential, but potentially having concerns with the fact as an assistant town manager, they also have an oversight duties. And being concerned that they'd be using some of the HR stuff maybe against them for oversight reasons. Hopefully not, but you never know.
Given that I've seen that there are numerous communities that use this particular position, and I obtained some of the job descriptions from those communities, including from the people that hold that, I don't necessarily see that as a problem, because in my last position I was an assistant town manager and covering HR when the HR director was out. And technically one of my jobs or my ultimate responsibility is for the overall administration of this town, which includes HR.
Right.
So I am involved in the hiring of key people here. Many of the interviews we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, I get to see everybody's background checks, as well as in some instances we have to look at very detailed information for our public safety hires, people that are going to be handling money. So it becomes a trust issue. You have to trust me, I would have to trust this individual, and we would vet those people like anybody else. So I don't see it as an issue.
Okay, and to follow up with a kind of a similar question that I was asking Melissa about this person. So if you've got this person as an HR director and assistant manager, under what circumstances do you see them stepping into your role when you're gone, or would that still be primarily Karen's job?
I think at this point in time, it would still be Ms. Harnoy's because of her level of business acumen and understanding of the town. I've seen in other communities where the assistant doesn't always step in. Oftentimes it's a DPW director or a finance director. So I don't think we have to change that function. It may be something you would visit after that person was on board and got acclimated a year or two down the road, depending upon what it is. But I would say, at least at a minimum, it's a 60-40. Their HR, their primary function in my mind is going to be HR.
Right.
And then as they have the capacity, they will take on those other things. But by expanding the title, it allows them to pick up some of that. Otherwise, you would be looking at a dedicated HR person. I think having that flexibility, and that's what other communities, some around our size, have done, I think it allows you the ability to utilize that person as you best see fit as the situation presents itself.
Do you think that there might be a benefit in our community to having a dedicated HR person instead? Did you look at that issue?
Mr. Chairman, Can you repeat that? Because
I asked
can't hear.
if he had looked into the issue of whether or not our town would benefit from having a dedicated HR person instead of this HR director / assistant town manager.
In most instances, when I've seen this job posted, the person has all the qualifications that a dedicated HR person would have. But there are often people that are looking to be a town manager down the road, and they want to have the experience of doing both. It may help us in recruitment. It's something we won't necessarily know till we put it out there. But I think we can accomplish everything we need. As I said, in my experience, it can be cyclical. There may be opportunities for that person to help out in other towns that I know from the area where I worked in previously had this role, and it seemed to work for them. So the Collins Center put it into their recommendations. So I believe Miss Accardi is a former assistant town manager, and I think she had also come from an HR background. So I think she would have put more into this. If she thought there were some caveats, she might have called them out at the time, but I don't recall seeing any.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Yeah. Very good. Councilor Vice Chair Adams, and then Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Steves brought up a very good point that I was going to bring up about who would replace you, vacation or anything like that. And obviously, Karen's been here for some time and she knows the ins and outs, which is great. But my concern would be the position itself, because if we don't have Karen and she decides to move on, where does that leave the town down the road? So I'd highly recommend that we review that in the charter itself. To obviously the town council can appoint somebody, but if you're gone on vacation for 2 days, 3 days, a week, or whatever it may be, you need somebody to go right to. So I would recommend that we take a good visit at that, just for the sake of the future of the town and the positions they're in right now. Thank you.
Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. When I look at this, it's a one-page plan that's covering four department changes, really. And I would rather see one at a time. And I like a little bit more detail given about this plan. For example, creation of a human resource director, assistant town manager. I would like to see the exact salary numbers. Where is the money going to come, and how much money is going to come to pay for this exact salary person? I would like specific numbers. To put it all in one plan, I just think it's a little too much. It's very confusing. I think it's unfair for us to vote on this tonight. It's something that we're going to have to take in, think about, and decide decide what to do going forward. He has presented a lot more tonight than was presented the other night, or was even presented in this plan. So I would suggest he break this up into one at a time. Human resource director, specialist, confidential clerk. The next plan would be the payroll and benefits specialist in the treasurer's office, cash management specialist. And then the third one would be the economic development director. And specifically, what's the salary specific? Where's the money coming to pay this salary? From where? Because this is an awful lot to consume here in a one-page document. So that would be my only suggestion, a little bit more in-depth, and break it up a little bit. Break it up into at least 3 parts here. Thank you.
Councilor Lazo.
Mr. Town Manager, I like your opening presentation. Some of it I do not like, some of it I'm favorable with. When we were in general government, when you were away, we had much discussion, and I really absorbed a lot through the subcommittee, that, the civil penalties that this HR department could run into, or did run into, how there was a person in the accountant's office that was doing HR, a person in the treasurer's office was doing HR, and the person down manager's office was doing HR. And I turned around and I said, well, why is it like that? I'm not a genius at this, but I would have never designed it that way. Because there was a gentleman in the crowd who owns a business in Southbridge who said that the HR department belongs far away from the head guy. And I looked at that gentleman and I turned around. It's an employee's department. It's not the boss's department. So the way I saw it, and I'm glad we're tackling this, I gotta be honest with you, I see the HR department not with an HR director / town assistant town manager. I wouldn't even want that name near it. I would want an HR director in a department with the HR specialist and whatever goes along with the HR department in their own office, in another part of the building, not in that front office. After talking with that gentleman, I further understood, because I was never a big fan of HR. I think that's a lot of fluff in the modern day government. I come from a small company that we get it done and we don't have HR. But in understanding what HR does on the benefits and the big payroll that we deal with, and finding out that at that meeting that we do a lot of the school's HR work. So the first thing I thought of was, let's take HR right out of the schools, negotiate it with Mr. Villat, bring it into town hall, centralize it, have a director of HR where an employee would go directly to this office, not to the town manager's office, not to the town assessor's office, treasurer or collector. This department needs to run independent, so then when something does come up, the manager, which the department will be under you, you will have much to do with how we ratify or straighten out a problem, whether it's with the state or workman's comp or whatever it is. But I think for separating the two powers is better for the town of Southbridge. It's better for the employees, where the manager's not on that ground floor. The manager is above that department, like you are with most departments in town hall. So if I'm not in favor of voting in favor of this if we're passing this here tonight. I also would like to comment, when people, and I must say, Ms. Wadsky, I commend her for what she's done in the town of Southbridge. I really think that a lot of the things that she brought forward was good for the town of Southbridge and did a great job. But the bond's not on fire. Don't sell me on that one, where we have to hurry up. The sky's falling. Appoint an acting treasurer, somebody in the circuit that's retired. We've done this under Jack Howley, Florence Chandler. When someone leaves, we put an acting one until the process is done, and it helps us get through it, even if the person is not taking the job in the end. So I like the discussion. I really am serious about HR. I understand it much better now than I ever did, and I think it deserves its own identity in the building somewhere else with a door that says HR department for all employees. And I would even outreach to the school district to say, if we're doing most of it now, why don't we just take a couple positions off the bottom line and put them in the town hall? They're your services too. And I think that's where I'm going with it. I see some name changes. I hope to God we're not doing the same thing the school district did when we change a name from secretary to executive assistant and there's a raise to it because of the name. That's how government blows up. That's what aggravates citizens and taxpayers. If the duties change, I don't have a problem with a money change. But if the duties stay the same, the hours stay the same, and the name changes, that shouldn't bother the bottom line. It should remain the same. Because say eventually you move on and somebody else comes in and they say, oh, an executive assistant in Webster gets this amount, we have to bump it up $5,000. That's how government climbs the ladder of salaries. So let's be cautious, councilors. I like what's in front of us. I don't think this should be the finished product. I really think we need to dedicate more to HR. I understand the rest of the reorganization, and I'm not quite against what we're talking about here. I think Peg does a good job. I thought the previous one was terrible. I'm glad we kept her, and I'm glad the other one moved on. Now, if she feels and you feel that we need to adjust something to make it better, I'm not against that. I thank you very much. I'm good for now.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCall.
I neglected to mention that part of this and part of this proposal and part of what we've discussed is there would be internal sight and sound separation, because it's unfortunate because of the way we have so many employees wearing multiple hats. They're expected to pitch in at different times of the day, so they are handling some of these functions. It's what has been in place, and we recognize it's time to change it. But when we make this change, we've already talked about taking a room or moving some of these files out so that there is a dedicated HR office where people can come in, shut the door, and have conversations. Because, as you alluded to, modern day HR deals with a lot more. Family Medical Leave Act, a variety of different insurance issues. And, we can't have somebody who's trying to perform an HR function at the same time somebody has to come into that office and get whatever that office's, other duties and responsibilities. So to have two people at a counter and you're trying to split that. Trust me, we don't do that, but that's what you want to avoid. And I completely understand your position and we recognize that it has to be separated. And similarly, because the council has made it a concern over the past, we provided sample job descriptions for these people and the modified salary schedule to show people where we were going to be putting people. There are changes to each of these job descriptions. I would not present something just changing the name or the title for any particular position for the sake of getting people more money. That's not what I came here to do. Again, it's about efficiency and effectiveness and economies of scale. If I may, while I'm still here, Mr. Chairman, I do believe that some of the questions that Mr. Marchetti had raised may have been addressed on that paper, because the salaries would be listed on that one page in conjunction with the new salary schedule. If somebody's going to be an MS-19, that would be the starting salary. And there was a paragraph that Ms. Harnois and Ms. Zawadzki had put together about where the money was going to move from the deletion, the addition of those, so that the bottom line would be essentially a zero increase in the overall salary line items when you get down to the bottom. Our goal was to do this without increasing the overall budget line items by, as I said, taking money from the savings. If we move something from an A9 down to an MS-19, or people were being hired at step one in the position, that was how we would recognize some of these savings to allow this to go forward. So, thank you.
Can I have a follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
On that? Do you understand, I just want to make sure I made it clear, HR director is here, assistant town manager is here. I don't know how this comes together. When the private sector says, you don't want the manager with this. You want this furthest away from the manager, but it runs independent. How can it run independent when it says assistant town manager? It seems like it's really a gray area and it's getting cloudy. I would not support that assistant town manager shackled to the HR director. I think the HR director has to stand alone, like the treasurer and the other department heads. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. In either case, if we had two employees, they would both report to me. I would have to deal with them. So if it's a combined position, they're still reporting to me on both issues. And I don't think it's uncommon. As I said, I could, if council so wishes, I could come up with a list of communities that uses the dual role. And I do think, again, it has advantages to a community of this size, because we may not need 100% HR every day of the week, and we may not need an assistant every day of the week, but there will be times when we need some capacity, and I need some capacity, because there are some heavy level goals, and I realized I omitted one before. We have $5 million in ARPA funds. I have to work with you folks pretty darn soon to come up with a way to spend that. And that's going to require a lot of infrastructure projects, a lot of bidding and RFQs and things that we're going to be working on. So there's always day-to-day operations that I could use a hand if the capacity is there. I'm not saying it will be, but as I indicated, there are cyclical aspects to some of these jobs, but it would be an additional resource to senior staff and to me as time permitted. But I can provide you backup on how many communities use this.
The scenario is, here is the HR director, assistant town manager. You call the office for the assistant town manager, do some assistant town manager work. It takes away from the employee's dedication of the HR position, because he will not or she will not argue with the boss. So there's where I think a conflict is created. I'm not saying that other towns that don't do it. I'm just saying I wouldn't like to see it in Southbridge. Thank you.
Very good.
I don't think that's any different than what we're doing now, because I have a full-time person in my office who at 1 minute answers the telephone, 1 minute takes a benefits question. So we're doing that now. People have to be able to...
But remember what the complaint is when Sawatsky came to us. We have one department over there pulling, one department over there pulling, one department over there pulling, and we're not getting the HR stuff done. So you're coming to us to straighten out the HR problem. And I kind of agree with these other departments are different than what we started out talking about. Reorganization was for HR. To Ms. Sawatsky's complaint or issues, which I think she was very good at presenting it to us. But I just think that's one position. Legally, I would not want to go to court and say the HR is with the town manager and some employer goes in and something happens like that. Right away, we're right back to the civil penalties. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Dow. You're all set? Very good. Councilor Chauvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. A lot of good discussion here this evening. First, I think the town manager alluded to this, so one of the council's comments was that we don't know what the salaries are. Town manager presented it. Salaries. Form says...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
Every time Councilor Jovan speaks, he's got to attack what another councilor says.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
all I'm
point
asking him to do is give us
Point
his
of order,
opinion.
Mr. Chairman.
Just a minute, just a
One
minute.
speaker at a time.
Okay. It would be one person at a time, please. I've taken the point of order. Councilor Jovan, continue, please.
What's his point of order? That I was attacking him?
No.
No, he called point of order. He called point of order saying I was attacking him because I had the floor. What is his point of order? Could the gentleman state his point of order?
My point of order is that as councilors, we're supposed to talk to the issue, not start attacking other councilors. That's my point of order. Thank you.
Thank you, and I don't believe he attacked you. I think he was pointing out that the salary information you were looking for is on the paper here. Continue, please.
So is your ruling that I was not out of order?
Correct.
Thank you. I was not attacking the previous speaker. I was stating as point of clarification because he alluded to the point that there was no information that said what the salary was. So what I was saying to Council Marchetti's point is exactly what my statement was, that the town manager provided the information on the salaries. He stated that there was no salary information. Salary information is right here by the Schedule 1. The form says individual will be at Schedule 1A9, Step 1. I can go to this form and say Schedule 1A9, Step 1 is going to make $3,200 biweekly for a minimum salary of X. That was my point to the previous speaker. For point of clarification, because the public's listening to this, and they may allude to the fact that the town manager hasn't presented us anything, where I'm saying we have the information. And I thank the town manager for this. I thank the town manager for a well-thought-out discussion. I was unable to make the general government meeting. However, the town manager this night, outside of all the presentations I've ever heard in recent years about reorganization of departments, this was a well-thought-out process based on a recent study that we're not going to sit for 3 years to sit on the shelf to figure out a problem that we have in human resources and management of the town. We asked the town manager to provide efficiencies for town government. I heard that earlier tonight that said, let's set a goal to develop the efficiencies for the management of our town. This, without a goal, this was a problem that the town manager this year alluded to, at the beginning of the year, alluded to human resources issues, has brought that to the forefront and provided us with, I think, a very sound plan on how to accomplish a multitude of goals. One, fix to human resources issues. I heard that he's going to separate an office, which I welcome, because I do not believe that human resources specialist should ever be in that front room, nor if it's a human resources specialist, by the former town manager's description, why are they working on liquor licenses? She's the human resources specialist, not the liquor licensing board person. I thank her for all the hard work that she does, but that's not her position. Confidentiality. We heard earlier tonight that we should have a town manager that gets out in the community and talks to our businesses and our economics and be a face for economics. How do we have a town manager? And I agree with that. I agree with Councilor Catrona's point on that. However, if we're going to have to the town manager that we already forgot about on one of the goals was ARPA funds, how is he going to present a plan, sound plan to us about ARPA, a sound plan for construction of buildings, a sound plan for curbside collection that I neglected to think about, that my colleague, that proactively as a councilor, we started this 3 years ago, because we know the clock is ticking on that. And we sit here and we go, how are we going to accomplish all that? So I welcome the human resources portion of it. I also welcome the town manager's portion, or the assistant town manager. I have seen, if you follow the MMA and you go on their website, they have a multitude of towns that are doing the same thing based on these studies. Part of the human resources director, assistant town manager's job is to work on special projects as required, coordinate all matters under the jurisdiction of the manager, and not specifically assigned to some other person or office. If we hire an individual for human resources, so we have an option. Hire a human resources director, and I believe we still need some kind of assistant to help tackle a bunch of multitude projects. Do we do 2 positions, or do we, for a year, look at this and implement a plan, a sound plan, and make it happen? The other thing on this, job description, oversees the employee performance appraisal process done by the department heads and aids them in the evaluation of employees to maintain a unified and consistent review process. For 3 years on this council, we've sat here and talked to the previous holder of that seat and said, do you do evaluations of your employees? Where are those evaluations? They come forward before council, you want us to reappoint these individuals, but we have no evaluations. So now we're telling this town manager with no assistants in his office to say, okay, now I want you to do ARPA, I want you to do these construction projects, I want you to do economic development. I also this year want you to put an employee appraisal process in. My good friend Council Alzo also talks about big government, about how we implement these programs for big government. We're empire builders. I don't see that in this plan because it's almost a net neutral approach. A fiscally responsible implementation to professionalize our processes to make sure that we adhere to Mass General Law, adhere to employment opportunities, and the multitude of changes in those properties, and also develop a strategic plan with some assistance to give us counsel for a vision for our future. So I fully support this plan. I think it's a well thought out plan. I'm willing to give it a shot and then evaluate it. And if this is adopted this evening, I would ask the town council to support that this document and this program be incorporated into the goals and objectives, not based on the presentation, but based on the implementation of this program, and evaluate it a year from now, and incorporate that into his evaluation. And those goals and objectives. That goal would be the implementation of this plan. It's a sound plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Catrona?
I have nothing this evening.
Very good. Anyone else? Councilor Marquetti.
So I would just like to respond to the previous speaker. Yes, the town manager provided us with a step, Schedule 1 step, and I look at it. I shouldn't have to cross-reference to find out how much someone is going to be paid. It should be right here in black and white. This is how much I'm going to start this person off with. This is where the money is going to come from. I'm going to transfer it from this department. I'm going to pay them this. I'm going to transfer this. I'm going to put that in their salary. When I look at the below, funding the organization, $65,300 needed for new HR director, assistant town manager. When I look at the Schedule 1, A9, Step 1, it equals $83,200. $28,000, let me back up a little bit. $36,000 to cover payroll for HR director and new full-time town manager clerk. Add up $36,000, $65,000, it adds up to more than $83,200. I understand that it's not going to be the entire amount of $36,000 to cover that person's salary, but I would appreciate it if it was specific. This is how much I am going to take from this department to pay this person in that department. Here are their job duties. This is what they're going to do. This is who was doing it before. This is what they're going to do. Here's their salary. And this is where the money's coming from. That's all I'm saying. And I would appreciate it if he took this and split it up into 3 reorganization plans. We started off talking about human resources at the subcommittee level. Now we're talking about 2 other departments, economic development, treasurer's office. I know we need reorganization desperately through you to the town manager. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not trying to pick this apart. I'm just asking that you give it specific salary, not a range, a specific salary, where's the money coming from, what their specific duties are going to be, and break it up into 3 different parts. Thank you.
Mr. McCall.
I will address Mr. Marchetti's question, but while I was sitting here, quickly Googled several towns, and I came up with 12 towns in a matter of 5 minutes. Weston, Foxborough, Holliston, Wilmington, Sudbury, Lunenburg, Milton, Westboro, Hanover, Wareham, Rentham, and Seekonk. And I could keep going, that have the combined.
I don't live there. I don't live there.
Okay.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Well, then just wanted to show you that we wouldn't be the only ones, we're not going to be the new kids on the block. One thing that I just wanted to point out about, 3 separate plans. We have vacancies, and there are certain things that I'm not at liberty to say, but I am concerned about how long we go with certain positions unfilled. We're fortunate enough that we did find some decent candidates to come in and interview, and from that we've selected some very good candidates that we'll be presenting some of them to you in the not too distant future. Others we're going to make offers and hire. But some of these positions cannot stay vacant, for weeks on end. We have to function here. So part of what we're doing is trying to take advantage of this turnover and implement the plan. And as I indicated when I first started, it was a confluence of events that brought us to push this forward, that subcommittee on August 9th, and then come back here. I guess in a perfect world, we would do 3 separate departments. But in order to find the money and make the transfers to pay for these positions so as not to take money from or add money to the bottom line, that's how we came up with this plan, taking the money from economic development by creating a supervisory position but not making it the director's position. And I think that bottom half of that page alludes to that. It talks about if somebody, for instance, the full-time clerk would be hired step 1, step 8. The others would be, everybody would be hired step 1. I understand that in a perfect world, maybe we should have called out a separate slide for that. time being what it is and working on other projects, we put this together. I tried to put together some slides this evening to illustrate the point. I wish I had a little more time. I probably could have done a couple extra slides that would have addressed that point. It just didn't come into the cards this week.
Good. Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. We just keep attacking. I'm going to speak the way I want to speak. We just keep attacking the town manager. The previous town manager and the town council, the only thing they do is fight, never look at the town manager and correct if he's right or wrong. And then they renew another 3 years for him or whatever, just to try him again. Now we have a town manager clean in the past, moving forward with some of golden objective we've given him, not all of it, and some of his own. We want a better town. We don't want to give him the opportunity to fix what is wrong all these years. They want him to do everything. HR, assistant, DPW, everything. He's doing everything. Give the guys breaks. Let him try to do his job. Give him the opportunity. I don't think one more position to save the town from a lawsuit or more time for the town manager to move forward on his work to be able to give you guys what you need for golden objective. I want to add in one golden objective, Mr. Town Manager, please, the gold magic, the stick magic. Can you find me the stick magic, please? Because seems like everybody wants you to, whoop, everything perfect. Thank you.
I didn't understand a word of that.
Councilor Lazo.
I'm lost. To a couple of previous speakers, I have an opinion, and I usually express it. I am a fan of this town manager. I think he's doing a hell of a job. But being a rubber stamp is not my job up here, okay? I don't drink the Kool-Aid. I do my job. So you can dislike me, you can not. I've been in it 35 years, school committee, council. When I run against a reorganization thing like this, I'm going to tell you right now, don't lose this salary sheet. The names are going to be changed. The manager probably will move on at some point, and then you'll see these jack up. They all point to another community, okay? I've seen it too many times. Do I think this manager is going to do that? My bet is no. That's not his style. But I've worked for 4 or 5 managers, and I've seen this happen. So for me, on the HR part, I don't want the HR near the assistant town manager or the manager in the same office or anything. That's just logistics. Legally, if we go to court, they have to look like manager and HR person of the employees. That's just good for employees. That's different than talking about an assistant town manager. We're the only town where the population went down last census. We have built back some of the citizenry that we lost in that time. And then I look at our schools and we lose numbers, but we build management. And the taxpayers are paying for it. When we turn around and say, what we have in our stabilization fund, wow, we got a lot of money. Oh, we've been taxing pretty well, and we've been filling those accounts, and we had a lot of projects. And we're going to pave roads. We're going to do our job. I don't have a problem with that. But the thing is, I'm entitled to say that HR should be separated from the manager's office. And I'm considering it to do this. If it doesn't, that's fine. I have my vote. I'm a no vote. And I'll let it go with that. But to turn around and come out with a comment that nothing's been done right in all the years is just wrong. There are a lot of great things happened in this town. $26 million school. Tons of things have happened in this town for years and decades. You know? And I'm not here to kill the manager. I'm probably going to be president's fan club this evaluation. But the bottom line comes down to is, everybody's got a story to tell, and that's mine. Thank you.
Councilor Jovan.
Thank you. Just as a point of clarification, according to the United States Census, population census, April 1st, 2010, town of Southbridge population 16,719. According to the 2020 census, the population of the town of Southbridge is 17,740. So there's an increase in population, just as a point of clarification. Just as a point of clarification, it was stated that we had a decrease in population. The census has come out, we have an increase. I'm not opposed to differences of opinion. Councilors, we have healthy debate. It's interesting that sometimes we use data and we can spin data any way we want. And one thing we'll say, hey, other towns don't have this, so I don't want it. But then we'll say, well, other towns have this, so I want it. I'm looking for the best plan for the efficiencies in town government here that do not increase. Now it's up to us now as councilors to make sure that we hold the bottom line on the finances of that department. To those points, we have salary structures and we would hope that we would hold to it. So again, I support this plan because I believe it was well thought out for the future of our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Lazo.
Just a point of clarification, we lost population and built it back. That's what I said, and we did. In this council, in the turnaround that we think we're in right now, of the building boom, which brought the housing market to life, commercial buildings to life, that's why we had a buildup in the population. But we did. We were the only one, I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago, we went down and everybody else went up. But then the economy turned around and then we went up. Anything would go up in this economy, remember that. Thanks.
Councilor Dow. You all set? Thank you. Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. I did have to me, the town manager was clear, and his brief was clear. I did have a couple questions, not because he didn't provide a clear presentation, it's because I thought it was, a charter issue, and even the one I'm about to ask here in a second is more of a position vice the individual that's sitting in the position. I want to thank Melissa for pushing this through. I really appreciated the fact that your days are numbered within the town itself, but that you work to make sure that this got as far as it has in front of the town council. That's heart, and we wish you the best. I will say is and I don't mean to point out Councilor Jovan, but he brought up a point about the evaluation process in which we do it with some of the town employees. And my concern is the same as Councilor Lazo's, is that you've got a town manager, assistant town manager / HR department. But there's a process to remove people from the town, even at the town manager level, if they were to abuse the system. Because you can imagine maybe a new town manager comes in 20 years from now and says, the assistant town manager really is going to do all my work for me, and your HR director spot is going to be second fiddle. And there is a process that happened back, I believe, in 2000, 2003, somewhere around there, when abuse of the system. So I do think there's a process in which there is checks and balances. I understand about the amount of money that it may cost down the road, and yeah, I kind of agree that down the road it probably will go up with 2% raises, cost of living expenses, all that kind of stuff. It does happen in this world and all that. But besides that, I appreciate all the briefs tonight and the conversations between the council, regardless if we agree or disagree. I do believe we owe it to the people and to the town, and also the staff here within the town hall to give it a chance. The only question I do have is for the town manager, is under your CDBG Economic Development Coordinator. Again, I go back to the position part. We got a heavy hitter in Ms. McDean right now, and that's great. But Ms. Dean, in 20 years, when she decides to leave the town, what do we replace with Ms. Dean? And who is it? And is it difficult to understand the CDBG process? Because you're talking about, we've had plenty of people that said they want to be the economic development coordinator, but they may have no experience as a CDBG coordinator, which can get us in a lot of trouble. And we're a mini entitlement town that this helps a lot of people, including our infrastructure. So I guess to town manager, or if you want Ms. Dean to answer it, is how hard is it to find somebody that is dual-hatted like that?
I'll take the first crack, and if Ms. Dean wants to add on to it. That's a concern just overall that I've had since I've been here. I've noticed a lot of our key people here in town wear multiple hats. I mean, Mr. Pelletier does both the building and the health side of inspections. Mr. Knoyer is our assessor and our IT manager. Ms. Zawodzki's been doing treasurer collector as well as benefits administration. Ms. Harnoys is our finance director and our accountant. So we have a lot of people that wear dual hats. And I do have some concerns in the future. We may have difficulty finding one individual that can handle a position that has such a unique, is involved in such a unique position here, where we have some people with very diverse skill sets, bringing them from each side, like say the assessor who's also doing IT. I don't know if we're going to find somebody exactly like that, should Mr. Knoyer leave someday. Some are more closely aligned, Ms. Harnoy's and Ms. Zawodzki's position. But going forward to your other point, I think we have a very good hire in Noor El-Gadiri, who I'm sure Ms. Dean will sing her praises. I think we are very fortunate to get this young lady to come in, and some of you have had the pleasure of working with her. I know my staff likes working with her, and she's the one who's interested in taking on more responsibilities and hours. And that goes back to what I said before about succession planning. I mean, you have a young person that's come out of school who's eager to learn and eager to learn the functions down there. They would have essentially role models. They would get the tutelage from Ms. Dean. And if someday Ms. Dean would leave, and we all have to be realistic. Municipal government's a machine. People come in, people come out. We're all fungible parts at the end of the day. So at some day, there'll be a whole new council here, there'll be a new town manager, there'll be new employees in town hall. And so we have to keep an eye on that in the background. And taking a young employee like that and giving them opportunities, that sets us up so that someday when we lose somebody who's wearing multiple hats and they've seen how that job works and they're a valued employee, hopefully they would stay and continue to be a member of the team. And I think Ms. Dean and I have recognized, as well as other staff members, that we have some young employees that fit that definition of the ones that we want to see come up. And so it is part of the succession plan, and by utilizing the plan we have here to expand her hours, I think that demonstrates on our side that we're willing to give her the opportunity to entice her to stay in the event something happens down the road. And I hope I answered your question. And Ms. Dean, I'm sure if you had something to add about how easy or difficult it would to fill your position and what you think about the plan and how integrating Ms. El-Gadiri into that plan.
Sure. So my sole purpose of being here tonight is to advocate for Nora's position. She is part-time. If you'll recall, a few years ago, that position was full-time. When Rosemary took the opportunity with Rose Knoyer's position, moved it to part-time. Rose then resigned or retired. We filled the position part-time. We had Wendy Chambers in the position for 13 months. In that time, I could only complete, I would say, 2/3 of her job description bullets with her. She was unable to fulfill the role. Now we have Nora. She's a go-getter. She's really, as the town manager said, we could groom her for a CDBG coordinator. She has the elements of economics, program management. She worked for the YMCA as a program manager in entitlement programs. She is the elements that we need. We need to graduate these kinds of employees. Think of Olivia Knightley, who was our intern through the Urban Agenda. She's doing that accelerated master's through Clark. in community development and planning, those are the types of talents we need to take and groom. If you have someone in HR that's got the resources, right, that's managing the resources well, and then you're really watching the skills that you've got on the ground, like the NORs, and you're trying to graduate them into positions, then you're building that like you're saying, the succession that we need. So from day one, I've seen potential in NOR. I have been advocating for 2 years since since the position became part-time. I've been advocating for it to become full-time again. And now, even more so, we're in this, we're about to embark on one of the biggest economic development booms we've had in a long time. And the function in our department for grants was covered under Rosemary. You'll recall you had me add one bullet point to my job description, grants. And you know how much my job has expanded with that one bullet. So right now, in theory, I'm 100% CDBG funded. My job is obviously expanding out away from that. And so if we want to be in compliance with our grant, we really want to consider funding me in addition through the general fund. If you also want to grow the capacity of the department and take advantage of the grants that are out there right now and the other economic development opportunities that we're building, right? We're doing the local rapid recovery planning in the hopes that that's going to open us up to other funding opportunities. That would, if we don't have the capacity in the department for NOR to take on some of that role, then I'm held back. So I think that, no, I'm not a director. Could the next person be just as talented as I am with economic development coordinator in CDBG? Sure. I come from a town administrator background. I have an MPA. There's lots of us out there. If you have an enticing town and you have, great town council to work for and lots of opportunity, you could sell yourselves for sure to other talent out there. I picture someone who comes from, there's many different models for economic development, community development, planning departments. So many of people like me could come from any variation of those departments that are potentially exposed to both grants and CDBG entitlement and so not both, but all three, and economic development. So I think, yes, you could fill the position. I think it's the right direction. I don't feel like the economic development director position needs to be filled either. And if I could just make the plug, you could even consider a temporary contracted position through ARPA that could help with the specific, for instance, EDA funding that would help us get money for, whatever those few time-sensitive buckets are right now. That could kind of help fill that economic development role in the absence of a director. So there's my big pitch. I beg you to please consider the org chart. I think it's extremely well thought out. Selfishly, I think that NOR should be full-time. Thank you.
Do you wish to address the council? Please state your name and address for the record.
Maureen Doyle, 771 Lebanon Hill Road. When I was looking at the manager's chart of employees, I believe there was no agent. Is there no agent? I thought it just said planner and then Conservation Commission clerk, which we already have, and I believe that's funded by wetlands fees, but I'm not sure. But I just want to say it's very, very short-sighted to not have a Conservation Commission agent. There's been a lot of problems in town, especially on Dresser Hill Road with erosion, and that position needs to be filled, I think. So please, 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 Councilor Steves brought up a great point about having a part-time conservation agent, and I think that would be, and I'd be happy to connect you with MACC, and they have some jobs listed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jovan?
Through you, I don't know, maybe Council. I thought our town planner is the conservation agent through his office. He serves as the conservation agent currently. I don't disagree that perhaps we should look at a budget to say maybe hire a part-time conservation agent, but I don't believe that we do not have one. That's my point, if somebody can clarify that.
If I can answer that.
Certainly.
At the moment, Eric's job is 70%. It's technically 70% planner, 30% conservation. But the way the actual job duties have changed in the Economic Development Office in the last year or so, he has added more planning-related stuff to his job, and he is, quite frankly, hasn't been doing the conservation side of it all that effectively. And he has admitted that he doesn't really want to do that side of the job. So I think that if he would much rather be a planner. His background is in planning. Okay. So I think it would be better for the town and for him is if we took the conservation agent job away from him, found somebody who was actually really dedicated to that conservation agent type job and can focus on it. I think it would be better for him, for the conservation, and for the town.
Thank you, Councilor Lazo.
The previous speaker, did you say that, what was the percentage of conservation?
It's 70-30 according to his job description.
70-30 towards planning?
It's 70% planning.
And does that hamstring him in the performance of conservation?
Well, I think it's more so that all of the various other job duties he's been doing since Rosemary left.
So
a lot of the stuff that Rosemary was doing have been split between Eric and Pat. So he's doing a bunch of other stuff. So maybe I say by now it's probably more like 90-10, if that.
And this is to my point. If this happens with this position, what if it happens with the assistant town manager / HR? HR suffers for one, or does the other one suffer for HR? This was my point when we talk about positions, that the planning is a planning person and a conservation is two different leagues.
They are.
Just like HR, and I think HR should be separate, and I think we have to look at your issue there. Thanks.
Councilor Ryan? Okay, very good.
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Dean? Ms. Dean?
I would just like to argue that the Concom position being inside the department without the director has just, it may have lacked the attention that once you build in these performance reviews and people are being managed by goals, then I think that you're addressing the weaknesses right there.
Very good. At this point, I'd just like to make my comments known.
Councilman
I'm sorry?
Oh, that's fine.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Please.
No, I was just going to comment that I think according to the charter, all we can do is vote it up or down. I don't think we can make changes to his reorg plan. And I think it's the town manager's reorganization plan, and I don't think it's the department head's reorganization plan. So I think it's just stick to the town manager's plan, vote it up or down. I don't think we can make changes to it per the charter. Thank you.
Councilor Lazo.
Unless Councilor Jovan can add to this, I thought the creation of positions has to be voted by us.
Right, but I don't think we can make specific changes to it. We
But we're
can't say,
creating-
take one person out or change his job description.
Are you saying voting the plan as a whole?
You have to vote it.
Without an amendment?
I believe
Correct.
you have to vote it without amending it. Yep.
Councilor Jovan, you have
Yeah,
the charter.
Mr. Chairman, to the speaker's point, according to the Southbridge Home Rule Charter, Section 5, or 4-5-1, reorganization plans by the town manager. The town manager may propose a plan subject to applicable law, terms of this charter, to establish, reorganize, consolidate, or abolish any town agency under his or her jurisdiction. Such reorganizational plan may not be amended by the town council, but shall be either approved or disapproved in the form as submitted.
Okay, very good. Very
So
good.
Council Marquetti is correct. See, I didn't attack you that time.
Thank you very
Councilor
much.
Marquetti.
I really
I
appreciate it.
supported you this time.
Okay, back when the town manager was hired, I think one of the things that came out was that the council was looking for a strong set of eyes in terms of what's happening in town and in the town hall in particular, in terms of how best to improve our delivery of services to the townsfolk on a personal basis, as well as to the efficiency of running a $63 million building, business. I think that he's gone above and beyond in terms of this presentation. It's eye-opening in a lot of ways. I think it's been given a lot of thought. I compliment the town manager and his team for putting together the plan. I know it took some time, and it took, there's some sense of urgency to it, but not an overriding sense of urgency. But I think the urgency is more of the idea that we want to see good things happening in town, that we want to see positive things happening in town, and that as the town continues to grow, we need to grow with it in terms of our government and the efficiency. As I was looking at the plan over the weekend, there were just some items that came up to me that just I kind of ticked off. There's legal compliance issues that are addressed by this. There's better service to town business and taxpayers. There's savings realized and used by creating greater efficiencies. There's a final, it seems to me, economic department solution. This is a good time to make changes to the extent that, as the town manager pointed out, other people have left and there are openings, and this is a good time to make the shuffle that needs to be done. Many issues are being juggled, generally speaking, when you have a smaller, more concentrated group of people that are doubling up and tripling up on the work they're doing. This system, I believe, that's been proposed promotes less chance of error and more use of time and good concentration. Things not being rushed necessarily, but being taken care of in good order with good due diligence. There's pretty much a zero-sum basis here. I will support the measure this evening. I think it's a good start to what needs to be done in town. I think it's well thought out, and I'm definitely going to support the issue this evening. Mr. Town Manager.
I just want to make one closing point, and I appreciate the confidence that the council has in my ability to bring things forward, but I really want to emphasize that a lot of the bulk of the work was done by Mrs. Awadsky, and Ms. Harnoy's worked alongside with her, and we worked together as a team, and we incorporated Ms. Dean in this. But the one thing I think that also reflects is developed a relationship with my staff and have the open door that they can come in and bring these to my attention, and we work together, and they can go off and feel empowered to help find these solutions. You know, you've said the town manager and his team, but a lot of us, you know, there are a lot of stars on our team, and in this particular instance, I think Ms. Zawadski has to be singled out as having done, you know, really recognizing the problem and bringing it back to me, and then I said, you go off, you know, work on the study, but it was a team effort. But I want to make sure that, you know, we will miss having her here. She does bring a lot of things to my attention, and I like the fact that people have built that relationship with me, that they can come in and say, look, I'm seeing a deficiency in this particular area. We can't take on everything at once. We take it, as Councilor Lazo likes to say, you eat the elephant one bite at a time. And hopefully this is the first of many things that we can work on. But again, I really want to thank the people behind me for putting together a lot of the materials. You know, I put some of the finishing touches, and I'm off in the face of these projects, but they work very hard for us, and I appreciate all their efforts.
Very good. Kudos to Ms. Zawadski very much. There being no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councillor Adams?
Yes.
Councillor Catrona?
No.
Councillor Daniel?
Yes.
Councillor Dow?
Yes.
Councillor Jovan?
Yes.
Councillor Lazo?
No.
Councillor Marquetti?
No.
Councillor Ryan?
Yes.
And Councillor Steves?
Yes.
There being 6 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes. Item number 6, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's debatable once you have a motion to adjourn on the floor.
Technically, it's not. Or if you have something you need to say.
Did happen to me at the P&D one time.
Will you withdraw your motion to adjourn? Quickly, I withdraw my.
I really wanted to emphasize that when you're working on the goals, I wanted to be on the record, I mentioned it in there, ARPA funds, when you asked me before, I neglected to mention it. But I do really think, you know, a couple of years, just like with the curbside collection, can get up on us pretty quick. And we have some infrastructure projects I think we should put on the table for consideration. So that should be part of the discussion with the subgroup. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.